everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar, Creating a Culture that Attracts and Retains Great Teachers. I'm Maggie Layfield. I'm going to be your MC moderator for the day. So it's no secret that the education community is plagued with the teacher hiring and retention crisis. We all know that the additional load caused by COVID and even factors prior to COVID, things like learning loss, increased expectations, and several other factors have put a heavy pressure on educators to perform certain standards. So how can school leaders create a supportive, collaborative environment that retains educators and creates an environment where they want to work and they want to stay? We're hoping to answer that question and a few others today during our session. As always, we'd love your participation, so feel free to pop a question in the chat, as well as let us know where you're joining us from and what role you have within your district. I'm going to start by introducing our guests for today. Kathi Krasnowski is an education technology specialist in the New Jersey area. She's the co-author of Sail the Seven Seas with Microsoft Education. She is a teacher of teachers, a global presenter, an ed tech enthusiast, and she loves to engage with educators on social media and chat about the latest and greatest in tech and learning. And Kat Kachi is a former primary school teacher who now serves as the community engagement manager for NetSupport and is the editor of Rise magazine, which is a global education publication supporting teachers and learning. She also hosts the podcast Of Primary Importance and is a member of the Global Equality Collective. Hi, ladies. Thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Maggie. Lovely to have you.
Lovely to have you.
For letting us be had.
We are very glad you're here. So I want to dive right into things. Kat, I want to start with you. You actually recently wrote a report on teaching and its impact on relationships, and it highlighted some really interesting insights. Can you walk us through a few things that you uncovered as you were doing research on this?
Yeah, sure. So I thought I'd capture just like a few of the key statistics, as otherwise we could be here a while if I read the whole report out to you. So the big one really for me was that 80.6% of teachers and former teachers said that teaching had a negative impact on their personal relationships. So really that's quite a stark number. And kind of looking into that, there were about 66% who felt they couldn't effectively prioritize and maintain personal relationships while teaching. And just over half didn't feel that their school or whatever kind of educational setting they're in actually gave them the support that they needed with things like mental health, well-being that would have had a positive impact on their relationships and really helped. And a lot of the causes of impact that we uncovered were stress, excessive workload, unreasonable demands, a lack of trust sometimes as well. That work-life balance was a huge one. And also an emotional investment, because teachers are so heavily invested in their students and their school, it becomes very hard to switch off. And you kind of end up bringing it home with you, and that's really difficult as well. So trying to be everyone for everything, I think, all the time, does take its toll.
It really does. Those are some pretty staggering numbers to think that many teachers felt that. And of course, you were polling people in the profession, trying to find out about exactly how they feel, which is amazing. So it's not some nameless faces, it's real educators who are suffering and who are experiencing these impacts for sure.
Yeah, and we had people kind of sharing their own stories throughout as well, of the things that they'd experienced that were happy to. And yeah, I mean, 69.8% said they were thinking of leaving or have left because of it as well. So I think it's quite a big number when we're looking at that kind of retention as well today.
And you listed a lot of factors that are obviously influencing that desire. And I don't want to call it a desire. It's not like they want to leave, but this feeling like they have to leave. So for both of you in your roles and your experience in education, we know that schools can't fix what they don't know is broken. So how would you advise them to be able to identify the areas they need to focus on? What are some things that schools could do to understand which of these factors they're contributing to, maybe unintentionally?
Well, I can jump in. I mean,
yeah,
I think
go for it.
To say the same thing. It's ask the teachers, right? Start with the teachers and ask them. And my advice for administrators or anybody in education, government, or whatever who's listening, I talked to a principal last week, or a head last week, and she said, if I put out a survey to teachers and people are going to complain, then I'm going to ask for their names because I want to be able to go back to that person and deal with that complaint or that issue or something. And I think that there's validity in that. But I also would say to any administrators or government people to take a really brave leap and occasionally put out a survey asking for authentic, open-ended feedback. Don't script every question, leave some open, and let people not put their names on it. Let them be anonymous. You're going to get greater truths, and it's going to be hard. Some of it's going to be hard. I know I have a school administrator certificate myself. That some of those criticisms would reflect on the work that I'm doing and some things that are in my control and out of it, but there's truth and there's nuggets in that. And I think if administrators or people who are running the show can step back, take a break, take a deep breath, be brave, and allow those responses to come in honestly, then there will be some solutions embedded in it.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with you on the anonymous as well. I think you will get more authentic feedback then. And alongside that, though, if you've got that open door policy, hopefully some staff will feel they can come to you personally and share those concerns. And I think it's making sure that you're asking specifically about things around well-being and mental health, and having those conversations are really important as well. And like there's some surveying tools, like for example, I know the Global Equality Collective do checks on this kind of thing where staff can say if they feel they belong somewhere. There's lots of questions around belonging and the school culture, etc. And it does actually give you CPD actions based on that, which is really helpful. So there are tools out there as well that can help with the, I've got all this information and there's all these things I need to fix and I don't know where to start. So it's definitely worth thinking about some of those aspects as well.
And I think you're right that a lot of times it's one, they are afraid of the responses they're going to get, and then they want to fix them, but then people are afraid to give those responses. And then it's if I get those responses, what do I do next as a result? It's easy enough to ask the questions. It's a lot harder to say, okay, great, I got all this information. What do I do? How do I solve the problem? So Kathi, you'd mentioned you have your school administrator certificate. So from you on the admin side, you've transitioned, you're in and more of an administrative or kind of a non-teaching role. Can you share what changes that you've made in your district, or maybe not you personally, but your district has made to help improve the school culture and to help make a more positive impact on the teachers and the environment that they're working in?
I hope so. I hope so. In my role, so I'm an educational technology specialist for my district, and I'm coming to you from the USA, from New Jersey. My district has 11 schools, so we have about 8,000 students in the district and probably close 800 to 900 certified teaching staff. So I hope that I've done some small part. But any of us, teachers, everybody who's done project management knows that when there are a slew of problems and you can kind of get them and organize them, then you triage, right? You prioritize them and you go, what's within my control? What's not within my control? Let me start with those. And even from those that are in my control, what's doable now? What can I start action items on? What can I form a committee about, right? And so to start to empower teacher choice and voice. And that's a big part of what I want to talk about today, because I think that's a lot of the solution is respecting teacher voice and giving teachers choice. And there's just great things that come out of that. So in my own district, I'm really happy and proud to say that several years ago, we did not have educational technology specialists, and we had a temporary administrator who had come to us from a different district, who was working here, who saw the value in having people in place to support teachers with the technology that they're being given. And he and I worked together to basically create this position. So now there are 4 of us in our district who do what we do. And I have I planned it out when we first began. What is this role going to look like? How will this be different? How are we going to support teachers in better ways? And I created an infographic, which I will share with you, Maggie, so that you can share it out with the resources later.
Good.
But I have a really cool 12-step infographic that was my vision for how we as ed tech could support teachers and take a load off, take some of the responsibilities away. And I actually do a presentation called the #1 most critical ed tech investment you can make. And I hope that people show up, because then they find out it's me, it's my job. But on that, I'll just give you a couple
Brilliant.
of the fun that have been on that. First of all, job embedded. So I can go to anybody. I have a booking link so that they can book me, and I can go directly to them. There's no judgment, and I can help them. Some people are just, honestly, some people are just finding out about fonts, right? And some people want to know how to do some complex coding things. So I'm free and accessible to anybody, judgment free, and that's on demand through a booking link, which is cool. I make webinars, I make Zooms, I make screencasts, and I save those, and I have a repository of resources. And if you ask me a question that's not yet been asked, I'll make a new one and I'll add it to my repository. I started a little movement called Learning in the Loo, right? Hashtag Learning in the Loo. And I just wanted to get some fun PD ideas, CPD ideas out to teachers. So I just print tips that I think would be useful on paper, and then I hang them in the men's and ladies faculty restrooms in all of my schools. And you won't believe how many times I hear, "Oh my gosh, I learned something from you in the bathroom today."
I love that.
Whatever every person wants to hear.
It's a hashtag. You can follow it. And that's another resource I'll share with you afterward, Maggie, if you want to share it out with everybody. There's
yes, please.
a Padlet that I started where I started posting my ideas, but I invited the global community to contribute to it. So now it's full of great ideas from people all over the world. And so if anybody wanted to start, there's ideas there for them, or they can share and post their own Learning in the Loo to it.
That's absolutely brilliant. And you said something that I want to, I mean, obviously Learning in the Loo is going to stick with me for the rest of my life. I think that's great. But you said something in the beginning about teacher choice and teacher voice. And there's a big movement in education with student voice, which I love, giving students that opportunity to take responsibility for their own learning. But I think sometimes we forget about teachers, and we forget about the fact that they also need to feel like they have a voice in the process and what goes on. Have you seen a lot of impact in your district when it comes to giving them the chance to speak up and speak out, and being able to kind of have ownership in the process, as opposed to just being told what to do?
So it's not always possible. Administration overrides me a lot, but but when it is possible, for instance, tomorrow I've got a great story. So this is so timely. My entire district is switching from Microsoft to Google. And that's happening on July 1st. As you can imagine, that is a massive undertaking and a huge switch for a lot of people who have never dabbled in Google before. And so being on the ed tech end, that's, kind of fallen on me and my team to facilitate that, at least not the IT part of it, but the learning part of it. So tomorrow in my district, there are no students because it's an in-service day. It's a staff development day, and it's called, I literally am calling it Google Day. Yay, Google Day. And we put out a survey, and we figured out 8 different topics that would be beginner level 101 Google starter things. And we put out a survey, and we let about 900 staff individually choose the sessions that they wanted to attend tomorrow. And then we built the schedule around it. So tomorrow in my district at 4 different campuses, CPD sessions are being led by some in-house teachers who we've empowered to be the leaders because they're already Google familiar, and they're leading sessions, and everybody got choice on where they want to go. I'll have to let you know after tomorrow how it goes, but I expect it to be a big success, and people really appreciated that we let them choose and we gave them choice, and we didn't put them in sessions that they didn't need.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, I have seen similar sort of things before with like CPD libraries online, where staff can pick and choose sessions they want to attend and things like that. And I think giving staff a bit of autonomy just really helps them actually get more benefit out of that. So I think that's a really cool way to do it. You have to let us know how it goes.
Sure will. And I built a Google website to go along with it. So anybody who can't come, or if we have a new hire next week or whatever, everything is video available online with a certification quiz for each thing and a certificate. Yes, it's all available asynchronously and in person. We're trying.
Very nice. I love that. And I think it's important, like you guys said, obviously the chance to have autonomy to choose, and also to say, you know what, you have to learn this. You don't get the option to just stick with what you currently have. You got to migrate. But if you're going to, you pick the things that you want to focus on, because some teachers may be more familiar with using Google, have used Google Classroom before, things like that. Others, it may be a brand new world to them, and they're lost and deer in the headlights already. So you want to help them. And one of the things that happens generally in districts and schools is that when you make those switches, the decision comes from the top down. Teachers haven't had a chance to have any say in that. They're being told this is happening, and that can cause a lot of anxiety, stress. It can cause a lot of concern with teachers, which adds to that mental load. So I guess the next big question is, how can school leaders ensure that all of the staff are taking care of when it comes to their mental and emotional well-being, whether it's them taking ownership of it themselves or the schools doing something to help them so that that's a priority and that's actually happening. I know, Kat, you have a bunch of ideas on that, so I'm gonna ask you to pop on first, but I know Kathi does too.
Yeah, oh no, absolutely. So I think one of the key things that leaders can do especially is lead by example. So showing that mental health is important to you and it's not stigmatized would encourage other people to actually look after themselves. So that open culture and open door policy, but also I think involve staff in things like well-being policies so that they know that they're an integral part of it. They understand what the school is supposed to be doing to support them. They can suggest ideas for things that would really help them as well. Look to and learn from other organisations. I think often schools feel quite siloed and they wouldn't really think to kind of look elsewhere, but there's a lot of organisations like schools that have comparable time and commitment requirements. Obviously, it's very different, but there are things that I think can learn from each other. You'll have a workload policy and involve your staff in creating it and actively monitor staff wellbeing and stress. So it could come down to those like anonymous surveys and things again, but keep coming back at it. Don't just do it at the start of the year and being like, oh, it's done. Like make sure you come and revisit it. Ditch performance related targets. Data performance related targets, please. And that's not just me. We had a clinical psychologist involved in the report that I did, who also said that that is quite a big stress factor for staff. And he also suggested things like setting reasonable and healthy boundaries, so helping staff set their own boundaries, things like when they're going to stop answering emails, responding to students, especially things like if we're talking about lecturers and stuff where students might contact them out of hours or expect things. So it's being really careful with those boundaries. Manage the planned and actual work of teachers was something that he brought up, focusing on that process rather than outcome. And then, yeah, space for teachers to attend counselling, doctor's appointments, etc., because that can be really hard when you've got staff who do need special support outside of school with professionals and they're not actually given any time off to do that. So that's really important. And help staff be more proactive when it comes to pastoral responsibilities rather than reactive. So giving them the training to support with the difficult things like children going through grief or any of those sort of areas where we're just kind of expected to just know what to do and what to say, on top of all the usual classroom stuff. So yeah, that's just a few things on my list.
Only a few. It's okay. Kathi, you want to add to the list as well?
First, Kat, I would love to see an infographic of what you just said or some sort of, I want to post.
I can make one, that's fine.
Oh, but they were going, and I was literally over here taking notes, not trying to be rude, but there were things I needed to write down. Oh, that's so much that you've shared, and it's so good. I need to share this little nugget because I think it'll make you both happy. It'll make everybody happy. So I live in the state of New Jersey. And in New Jersey, the governor recently passed a law about sick days or revised the policy about sick days for the teachers union. In my district, I have 10 that I can take in a year. And it's been pretty strict in the past in that I need to be sick. This isn't for my child or somebody else. This is only if I'm sick. And, they can require a doctor's note. They don't always. But the new law, and I printed it out so I could read it to you. As of this year, the sick days, teachers can now take sick days if they need to, and up to 10, for diagnosis, treatment, or recovery from a physical or mental illness, preventative medical care, caring for a sick family member, reasons related to domestic abuse, death of an immediate family member for up to 7 days, to attend meetings, school conferences, and other events for their child.
Oh yeah, that's the big one I think often gets missed. So that's really lovely.
Reasons related to the closure of their child's school or childcare facility. So it just added so much more. I felt like it's a heavy weight that's been lifted to know that, if I need to take a day off to go to my child's school play, I actually have that day and I don't have to feel guilt about it because teachers feel guilt.
because you are doing a job where it's like you're taking good care of other people's children and all these lovely things, and but sometimes you don't get the time to do any of that nice stuff with your own kids, you know. So it's great that there's those opportunities there.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that obviously they've opened that up, which is really great. But then part of me rages a little bit that, you know, those are things where I'm like, that you should have extra days off so you can go do those things too. Like, why is it only 10?
I
But
know,
you know, we
it's so
take the
hard.
victories we can get
Yeah.
in little steps. So
And can we
recognizing
have
that,
it in all the states as well?
yes, everyone blanket policy across the board. Someone go
Yeah.
knock on the White House and be like, make this happen. But
Maybe by saying it here, so many people will watch this webinar, these recordings, that they'll all say, yeah, we want to do that too.
yeah, right to your local representatives, guys. Yay, speak out. But no, that's really important too, because I think I think a lot of us have felt that guilt, especially in education. I'm a former educator myself. If I'm not there, I'm letting 100+ students down by not being a teacher, and so you push yourself through, and you realize that just makes you miserable. It makes the kids miserable. You inevitably get them sick, or you know, vice versa, they get you sick. So I always think if our policy is students should miss a day when they're sick so they don't infect others, teachers should miss a day so they obviously don't infect others. Like there should be flexibility to do that, and obviously be able to have that time so that you have that work-life balance, which is so critical. I think that teaching often becomes more than just a job. It becomes part of your life. It becomes part of your identity. And that leads to answering emails after hours, responding and doing lesson planning and grading on the weekends, and not drawing those boundaries that then makes it hard to kind of draw the line between what you do and who you are, and your school family and your work family. And that makes it very difficult when you don't have people enforcing those boundaries. So I love the idea of admin obviously modeling that, and then the schools pushing that and saying, this is what we want you to do.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. And Kathi, earlier when you were talking about the Google Day and the training you're doing for teachers, you were talking a lot about like having that day off to the professional development. We know so much to do, so little time, the good old adage and things that we hear a lot, and that really relates a lot to professional development, where I tend to see schools where they have 3 days at the beginning of the year, or 4 days, and that's it. And then occasionally it's thrown in, but that's not a whole lot of time, especially for new staff coming on board, to really have time to learn what they need to know before they're kind of a fly by the seat of their pants, into the fire kind of as things go along. So we know that best practices, processes, technology has changed a lot over the last couple of years, but schools are still struggling to provide sufficient professional development time, and that's causing problems for staff as well. What do you think that administrators or schools could be doing to help change this and to make PD more of a priority, which would then alleviate some of that mental stress and anxiety that teachers have?
Yeah, it's so important. It's critical now, right? Because tech isn't supplemental anymore. It's integral in everything that we're doing all over the place. And so I used to say, if you bring a teacher in and you hand them an iPad, or, I have a Surface Book here, you've given them $1,000 piece of machinery that's basically a doorstop, right? It's just, if they don't know what to do with it, it's not going to get used. It's not going to get used in ways that impact teaching and learning. So here I am on the same rah-rah train again, but I think the number one thing that schools can do is to invest in hiring educational technology specialists. Now, my job, when I first created my job, it was called I named it, right, because I created the position. So it was called Technology Integration Specialist. And I think somebody from NetSupport picked up on this. About 2 months ago, I did a tweet and with a graphic, and I said, I'm no longer calling myself a technology integration specialist, because that word integration has changed, at least from my perspective, to be integrating programs. So you've got to make sure your student information system integrates with this program, and I don't know, we use ClassLink or Clever to pull down rosters from one roster to make these things work, and all those integrations. And it started to become my job. And I don't want that to become my job. That's not teacher focused. That's not student focused. That's system focused. And it's not what I enjoy. It's not what I'm good at. So I went back and I changed my whole job title. So now I'm an educational technology specialist again. And I avail myself to teachers all the time. I'm job embedded. So when somebody has a prep period or a lunch period, or they want to meet before or after school, or they want me to post a resource, maybe we can't pay for 7 or 8 substitutes to have a time or a day or place. Maybe that's not always as possible as it was before, but knowing that I can come to you at your convenience, and there are others of me in my district, I think that's really a great way. You're investing in one human resource, but that human resource can impact teaching and learning in so many different ways. And even if I can't be there in person, I'm good for a screencast. I'm good for, I'm most of the time I'm good for a text after school or something like that. And so I can create resources on the fly. I had a teacher the other day say, I'm teaching a unit on the rainforest and I can't even have the time to pull digital resources for my kids. Can you do it? Yeah, I can do that for you because you don't have time because you have so many other things. My job is to take things off your plate. And I think there's a solution there. I think that might be a big part of it.
That is amazing. Like just the way that you're there, obviously, as a resource, and not just obviously coming to them, but just if they need something like, Kathi, I really can't do this, or I don't have time. Like to know that you had someone who could do that is a huge weight lifter for it would be so for so many teachers. And you're right, that human investment of one of you on staff, versus paying for external resources, or think of the money lost if you didn't invest in someone, of then people not using the technology or not using it wisely, and you spent all that money and it goes down the drain. That's something too where districts can then get that ROI, return on investment for the devices and things they've invested in. But it's also a human return on investment in terms of the benefit the teachers get knowing that they have someone that they can lean on instead of all by myself, doing this on my own, like hoping I get it right, that I don't muck up my kids' learning process. That's totally awesome. I love that. Kat, what about you? Do you have any tips or suggestions for schools with regards to helping them support new teachers? So obviously they tend to need a little more hand holding, a little more guidance. So what could schools do for the newbies on board?
So I think this is where mentoring would be really useful. So actually kind of partnering them up with someone in school, who, didn't even have to necessarily be the exact same year group or anything like that. Just someone that knows the school well, understands their processes. Because even just having someone you can go to when you're like, I just don't understand this marking policy that you have, someone who can sit down with you and work it through with you, is really helpful. So I really think that's really good. I think giving staff time to actually go and observe each other, without it being like a big kind of thing, just I'm going to go and sit in on this lesson and just see how this person does it, or just get ideas. I think that's really good. And have maybe even little separate buddies, so separate to mentors, just kind of buddying up with someone that can they just check in with each other, how was your day today, etc. Doesn't have to be super kind of formal, rigid, but just someone they know they can lean on with the odd thing that they might be struggling with. And also praise goes a really long way. I think often new staff only really feel like they're being told what they're doing wrong and what they need to work on and what's next, etc. It'd be nice to have the people make an effort, especially like school leaders, to go and say, oh, I saw your lesson the other day, it was really great, or I heard you're doing this incentive in your classroom and I think it's a good idea. Just something to let them know that they are doing some things well as well, I think would be really nice. And yeah, just look at how you're doing observations, like what is the purpose of them, what's actually necessary in those lesson observations, and how can they be more beneficial for both parties. Because I think there's something that's stressful for all teachers, but I think especially for new teachers, that fear of that judgment, it can be quite strong.
That's very true. And of course, not knowing it's nerve-wracking to everybody. You start a new job, no matter what it is, performance reviews, knowing someone's been looking at you and what you do. And when your performance is based off of your students and their outcomes and their performance, that's also hard, like to be judged against how they're doing, not just how you're doing, but how they're doing as well. And Kathi, you mentioned something about that earlier about, I think it was you, Kathi, about dropping the performance, or was it you, Kat? I can't remember. Oh, it was you. It was you, Kat. I was like, what did you say this brilliant thing earlier? I'm so I keep forgetting, but dropping
data performance rate targets to drop.
Yes,
it should be more about progress, not about data. Because I think, I know when I was teaching, I would get set these very unattainable targets sometimes of, right, we need X percentage of pupils at the expected standard for year 2 by the end of the year, and this many can be exceeding and this many below, and it's just not realistic. And then when you don't meet that, you're a failure, when actually what you've seen in your own classroom with your own individual children is how much they've grown, how confident they are, like what good problem solvers they are, all these things that can't be measured by a simple level. And some of the little silly things that stop them from getting that expected standard are crazy, but I won't go into that with the curriculum. That's in the curriculum, but it would just be really good to not focus so much on that data, because it's just like if you haven't reached it, then you failed, when actually you've probably done an amazing job for your students as a whole child.
So, curveball question. We know that most schools have to have performance-based standards because that's how we like to do things around here with everything being grades, levels like that. So we know those standards have to exist. We know that people have to reach certain benchmarks. But how do you think a school could adjust their culture so that teachers know they have to do those, but that they sense that there's a greater priority, or that they sense that there's a greater goal that they're working towards? So, I know this is where I have to be, but bigger picture, is there something an administrator or a principal or even like a head teacher could do that can maybe shift that so that the pressure doesn't weigh so heavy on teachers?
Did you want to jump in, Kathi? Or
Well, my initial thought is more praise, less push. That when you were asking that, that's what I thought. So, you'll attract more bees with honey, that kind of a thing. I think especially with new teachers, like Kat was saying, build them up, and praise is so important. And I would add one thing to that: let them lead. Define them as leaders. So if I have a first year teacher and I want to retain that teacher, I pop in, I do an observation. Yeah, there's some things to fix. We'll get to those. We're going to make those gentle pushes. But when we can praise, authentic praise, and then say, I liked it so much. Would you be willing to share that at the next faculty meeting? I would like to lead a little committee on how to make this part of our embedded practices here, right? Empower them as leaders. Now, if I'm a first year teacher and I got that from my administrator, I feel really special. I feel empowered and I want to do more. And I think when it comes to teacher retention, if you recognize them as leaders for the things at which they excel, then you're more apt to keep them.
I think, if you're empowering them in that way as well, I think that would help them understand that, yes, there are these certain standards they've got to meet, but that you're being seen for other things that you're doing really well. So it's not just about that. There's more.
That authentic praise really is so true, because everyone knows when you're saying something nice just to be nice, but I think when you genuinely are looking for the good in people and what's going really well, and you can highlight that, that's a great way to help. Like you said, you catch more flies with honey. Like you're able to get them to then be willing to change because they feel like they've been recognized that they do some things well. It's not all bad. There's a lot of good that's happening there too. That's brilliant. So we know that there are a lot of really cool technologies out there these days, sometimes a little too much technology in the classroom. But there are a lot of great technologies out there that are not student focused, but that can actually are more teacher focused, that can help rather than hinder teachers in the classroom. So what are your go-to tools, whether it's something for teacher mental health and well-being, whether it's something to help teachers do their jobs more effectively, but with less, with less time, anything you think is a great must-have or good thing to look at for our lovely teachers?
I hope Kat goes first because I'm dying to hear.
Well, so I would say I think there's a lot of tools that every school has that maybe they just need to utilize a little bit more. So those sort of things that can save time and streamline stuff are all winners as far as I'm concerned. So even things like making more use of audio notes, so you're not writing out marking in books. I mean, every school has some sort of device that you can record audio on. You could record messages for students that they can play back the next day if you can't give them the verbal feedback on the spot. Those little things like that, I think, would just make a big difference. It's just that sort of streamlining. And then if you have tools for things like classroom management and safeguarding, like we have here at NetSupport, it's just like one less pressure on the teacher because they know that's covered. They know what's happening. They know that everyone's kind of being supported. There's help with formative assessment. So I think anything that streamlines or saves teachers time is just going to be the big win for me.
Kathi, what about you?
I agree with all those. Of course I do. I would say any creative tool, because I think it takes us off worksheets and all the grading needed to do that. Instead of worksheet, if I can put a student on Book Creator, and instead of, the 6 worksheets they were going to do today and each day this week, they're working all week long on one book, but it's meaningful and I've got time to meet with them. Then any of the creative tools, whether Book Creator or Flip, or there's a gazillion of them now, Genially is another favorite. Those are great. Anything that has a dashboard in which teachers can see real-time feedback. So if that's a Microsoft form that auto grades for you, oh my gosh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Or I mentioned Book Creator, right? So when my students are creating in Book Creator, I can see little books and I know where they are and I know what they're working on. Microsoft OneNote is another one with the class notebook. You can see what's happening there. And so it's not a big after school lift. It's something that you can do in real time. A favorite that I've been loving also lately is Merge. Merge cubes, the 3D cubes?
I love the Merge cubes.
Great teacher tool. And I was for this in particular, because guess what? You can do Merge Object Viewer and see tens of thousands of objects, from plants to fossils to,
so you don't have to find them all yourself.
you don't have to find them, and can hold them in the palm of their hand and can turn them around. Oh my gosh, what a great teacher tool. And I just think, yes, you don't have to buy them and you don't have to find them. And that's been a really fun one too. So
resource banks and stuff as well was huge, definitely. I know when I was teaching, we used so we were using things like Seesaw, and the kids were uploading their own work. So they took a photo of the picture they'd drawn or whatever, upload it, great, and then we just do a little mark and it's done. So you can keep that going and then share bits with parents, and it was just nice having that. You could see that timeline, and students could kind of add group work on there, record little videos, and they loved it, especially if you had it up on the board so they could all see each other's work kind of being added in and shared in the folders and stuff. So that's really nice as well. So it doesn't mean that there won't be a record. There's still ways to record it. I think it doesn't always have to be in a book, written down in a book or on a worksheet, like you said as well. I think there's so many ways that we can record things that would make a big difference.
I think that's a big thing too, is we've moved past the traditional paper pencil, although there's a time and place for handwriting. I think it's a huge impact on the learning process. But I think when it comes to teacher workload, especially the thought of taking home 100 essays if you're a high school teacher, or 100 tests that you have to grade, something about carrying that stack out with you, just mentally, it crushes you, and you're like, well, there goes my weekend, guess I can't hang out with my kids. So anything where the teacher can feel like they're not having their time taken away from them, where it's going to speed up the grading process, or it's going to make it easier for them to look at something and actually be able to see if the students are completing work. And something you said, Kat, about the seesaw, about seesaw.
This is making me think.
The seesaw, the seesaw of education, but where they take a picture of the work that they've done, that's a great thing where teachers can also take a step back and say, you know what, I'm not going to grade it for accuracy. It's more about, did you complete the project? Did you work on this? Did you get something done? And that's about participation, not performance. And that's changing the culture for the students, which changes the culture for the teacher, because it's my kids did X, Y, and Z activity. I'm going to give you credit just for doing it, even if it's not the world's best, even if, it's not about, you got all the multiple choice questions right. There's something about that then everyone feels the alleviation from the students all the way up, and the teachers get time back and they get part of their life back, which is always really important.
And the kids like having a bit of ownership over everything as well. It makes them feel really kind of grown up, like, oh, like my year twos used to think it was the best. Like, well, look at me, I'm basically the teacher, I'm uploading all my work.
I've done things.
That kind of ties into PBL, right? Project-based learning, which I'm a big fan of.
I love that.
I would so much rather put kids on a 2-week or a 3-week journey, have micro learning happening every single day, and incremental steps of learning where it results in some big project. Then
I think their retained learning is so much better as well, because they've gone through that process for a longer period of time, and they've had time to think about it, rather than an hour lesson. You complete this worksheet at the end and then we never come back to that topic again for about 4 months.
Absolutely. And that actually brings about kind of the idea of, when you look at the teacher workload, and you want teachers who want to stay at a school, teachers want to teach in an environment where they feel open to try new things, where they feel like they're allowed to do something different. So this is again curveball question, but is there anything that's happened at a school you previously taught at or a school you work at now where you saw the administration opening the door for teachers to try something new without fear of retribution? And how did that impact the overall staff like feeling and positivity towards the school environment and being a teacher in general?
I've been tweeting about this, I think a little. I'm wondering if you saw any of my tweets. I am so blessed to be in a district. We got some new administrators this year, and some of the people at the top said they want to start this. So we put out a survey, we got a pilot group, and we formed something here from kindergarten through 12th grade. We picked 16 people to be part of what we're calling the Dream Team. And Dream is an acronym, of course, because we were education and everything has to be an acronym, and it stands for Designing Rich Environments for Aspiring Minds, right? So the whole purpose of the Dream Team is, first of all, we looked at furnishings because we want to set up our classrooms where there is no front of the room, that there are unique, different learning spaces, and there's some choice involved in where kids can go. We studied that. We did all kinds of things, and teachers have now selected furnishings, which for 16 teachers ordering all that that's a big deal. There are some in every one of our schools, but then secondarily, or really primarily, but we had to look at it second, is now that your rooms will be set up this way, how are you going to teach differently? What's that going to look like in your classroom? And the administration, who I'm working right under them to facilitate all this, is super receptive. They really want to empower teachers to do this. And they're looking at this group of 16 to be the pilot group because they want all the other teachers to be jealous of these people so that those behaviors and that kind of teaching becomes replicated. And hopefully we can build on that and make more inventive classrooms and more. We talked a lot about doing PBL and the importance of being globally connected with other classrooms outside of your school or district. So that's a lot of the work that's being done now, and it should be implemented by next year. Super excited to see what will happen with our dream.
That's amazing. I think having
awesome.
the environment to be able to make those kind of choices is really incredible.
Yeah. It does bring up the question though that you mentioned, like, okay, it's 16 classrooms, 16 teachers. That's not free, obviously. So
I knew we were going to get to the budget. So
yes,
but we don't have to think about that.
I know, but money is everywhere. You got to do it. So when we think about something that tends to be a negative, a lot of times budget is associated to what that means for a teacher culture, whether it's paying teachers less than they really would like to be paid, or whether it's not having the resources to allow them to invest in things. So how have you seen budget impact culture, and is it possible to influence culture change if you don't have a massive budget?
I'll start by throwing this out there. It's not the right answer. It's just my thought on this. And that I think just like with my household, budget requires some fiscal decision making and prioritization. And sometimes that just needs a new perspective. Like, are we going to put in new stadium seating at the football field, or are we going to get interactive TVs for some of our special needs classroom? And it's that decision making. Are we going to put new lockers in all of the secondary schools, or are we going to set up a program where students can get tutoring that they need, before school in the mornings? And those are some hard decisions, because sometimes you want the new and shiny, but sometimes it comes down to something else. So I think it's a prioritization and triage when it comes to budget can do a lot. It's still not going to be enough money.
No, exactly.
It's true.
I think making more use of what schools have. So I think sometimes schools will have so much different kind of tech within them, or like different kinds of software and apps and all these different things that they're not actually using. So I think doing an audit of everything in the school, what's being used, what's not being used, because we could make some money back. Like, that trolley of laptops not been used all year. Do we actually need them? Maybe we could get rid of them. Maybe we shouldn't buy just automatically, because it's often like set up on subscriptions, for example, with some of these software things. Like, do we need to renew that? Actually, no one's used it. So there's lots of ways to save money that I think would be really useful. And with when we're talking about the culture change, I think there's a lot of things that are still free that schools can do. So, I mean, talking to their staff, which is one of the things we said at the very beginning, that's free. And looking for free services that can support as well. And talking to other school leaders, not being afraid to kind of within their own networks. Like, I know, for example, here we have a lot of head teachers groups and things, not being afraid to talk to other schools and say, Actually, I think we have a little bit of an issue around this. What's it like in your school? What do you do? Have you got a wellbeing policy? Can we see what it's like? Because we want to write one. Kind of not being afraid to get advice from each other, an example practice. So I think obviously those are just really small starting points, but they are all things that schools can do that won't cost money. And with the audit, it might even save them some money as well.
That's really true. That obviously sometimes the money is there. You just have to find it, or you have to repurpose things.
It's
And I love the
definitely
idea of
repurposing, like you were saying, Kathy.
but like the community share idea of, not being afraid to go outside of your own district or your school and asking someone else, do you happen to have X, Y, and Z? And maybe they do, and it's just lying around, and you could share resources and swap, or can we borrow this for half a year and do this and then give it back to you? There's a lot of things we could be doing to overcome the budget issue that would still allow for flexibility so teachers can try something new or do something different, and they can feel like they have ownership, which I think really goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning is if you have voice, if you have choice, if you feel like you're being listened to, or you have the opportunity to speak out and ask for things, that's the kind of place where teachers are going to want to work, and they're going to want to stay because they know that they're valued and that their opinion has weight and it has meaning in a school district. So I would say kind of final thoughts would be, if you're talking to an administrator and they're like, oh my gosh, what are the top things we should be doing in order to attract teachers and keep them here? What would you say are one or two things they should be prioritizing or looking at doing so that their school is the kind of place that people want to work and want to stay at?
Did you want to start, Kathy? Because I know obviously you're in that kind of position.
I am. Well, when you create a great culture in a school or a district and that the community knows about it, there's something to be said for that. So inviting the community in, but also just the importance of telling your story, telling it loud and proud, getting it out on social media and any other way that you can, especially when you have fun and cool things going on. So if your staff are, I don't know, they're creating extraneous things. So you have field days and you have talent shows and you have craft fairs and you have events like that. When the staff are doing good things, put that word out there. When your teachers love what they're doing, create a hashtag for your school. When great things are happening, have them tweet out the positives and get that positive story out there. If I'm a newbie teacher and I'm looking for a job, or even if I'm an old teacher and I'm looking for a new job, I want to look on social media. I want to see the perspective of the school where I'm going, and if the community has a good feeling about it, then that's coming from somewhere, and hopefully it's coming from the teachers in the school itself. So I think that's an important part.
Yeah,
that's a great idea.
Good point, actually. Yeah, no, that would really help. Yeah, so my big one really would be about talking to teachers, and it's kind of communicating with them about everything in different ways. So having the opportunity for like anonymous surveys, having check-ins with people, especially new people that might need it. I think just really focus on communication in lots of ways would make a huge impact, and really embed that culture and involve staff in all those kinds of different policies and your school values, get them to all be part of that as well, so that you will really understand it and you're all part of it.
I think both of you said like it's the two C's, communication and community, but it kind of goes hand in hand of not keeping all the good stuff internal, but sharing it external. I think a lot of times teachers are doing really great things in the school and other teachers don't even know about it. They have no idea. And so they don't know they're part of a really cool culture. They don't know that Mrs. J down on the second floor is doing some really cool STEAM stuff with like an app that she found and is going through. And so I think the idea of internal communication and then external with the community and letting people see what you're doing. I love those ideas because I think that allows for everyone to see what an amazing community you've developed in the school, and it creates pride in the sense of, I'm excited to be here. I love where I work. I love what I do. And we can hopefully then help teachers to want to stay there. And of course, Kat, like you said, the mental health side, polling teachers really knowing where your weaknesses are and then addressing them. I think if schools can prioritize that and focus on that, they're going to find a big shift in teachers wanting to stay and teachers continuing to teach and not trying to leave the profession because they're so overwhelmed or so burnt out.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys have given some really amazing ideas. We are going to open the floor up. So if there's anyone who wants to ask any questions, of course they can. But otherwise, tell us really fast, Kathi, where can we find you on social media? Since you're such a big social media person, I know it's learning in the loo. We should look for the hashtag, but
yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing pretty much straight after this.
Yes. But where else can we find you for ideas and tips and tricks? Where should people be looking for you?
Okay, so my last name is Kersnowski, which is a big, long Polish last name. I married it, but I shortened that to Kersey. So it's Kerszy, pretty much everywhere. So at Kersey on Twitter and, on all the places. And I actually have a website. That's probably the easiest place to go for all of it. It's kersey.com. So KERSZI.com.
Yay.
Simple.
And Kat, what about you? Where can we get some of your resources, or where would you direct people to engage with you to learn more about all the things we talked about today?
So I'm most often on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. I still think of it as Twitter, as Really School K. But you can also find me on LinkedIn, Kat Kathi as well. Those are my two main ones, I would say. And then we've got the magazine as well. So it's netsupportsoftware.com. And I believe there's some sort of rise magazine, but that's another place to look and get lots of free resources, because it is a free magazine and it's from educators for educators. So that's a really good place to get some more support as well.
And we can't forget that Kat is the host of Primary Importance, a great podcast learning about primary education.
Yeah, that's true. I should have mentioned that. You could watch the episodes.
And actually hear from other educators and what they're doing and what's exciting. So can they find that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the places?
Yeah, and like NetSupport Radio and YouTube as well. So we've got it all kind of ready to find.
Awesome. And then where can we see you in person next? So Kathi, where are you popping off to next in the world of Kathi events?
Oh, I don't have anything on the horizon, and I'm pretty happy about it. I just got back from there was a New Jersey conference in TCEA.
Yeah, of course.
I will not be going to ISTE this year. I'm taking a year off. Yeah, personal well-being and all that good stuff for the reasons we talked about. And I don't have anything on the horizon yet, but I'll keep you posted.
Awesome. Kat, anywhere you're going to be in the near future?
So, well, I'm hoping to get invited to ISTE, but I will leave that to everyone else. But no, I'm going to be in Leeds at LearnEd as well. And I cannot remember the date off the top of my head because I only found out recently I was doing it. But again, that'll probably get popped down. But yeah, in March, I'm doing LearnEd in Leeds, which I'm really excited to do. And I'll actually be speaking.
Yay! Well, we will be sharing all the resources that everyone has mentioned throughout this in a follow-up email, as well as a link to the recording so people can watch us back. We appreciate everyone joining us today, especially Kathi and Kat for being our panelists and co-hosts. And we hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you from NetSupport, guys. We'll see you later.
Thank you. Bye.